Royal Guard makes the arrest. After Princess Charlotte commands, find who hurt my brother. Princess Charlotte had always loved peaceful afternoons in the palace. On this particular day, the sun floated gently over the gardens, and the soft wind carried the smell of fresh flowers into the open windows. The palace staff moved quietly through the halls, and everything felt calm, as if the day had promised nothing but comfort and ease. Charlotte was sitting near a large window, reading a book about animals, one of her favorite topics. She liked learning how each creature had its own way of protecting its family, finding food, and living in harmony with nature. It made her curious and thoughtful. As she read, she could hear faint laughter from the courtyard. It was her younger brother, Prince George, playing with a few of the palace attendants who often entertained him. Charlotte smiled because George always brought energy into quiet spaces. He was cheerful, curious, and always ready to turn even a simple ball game into a big adventure in his imagination. She often admired how easily he made friends with everyone, and how his laughter seemed to brighten every corner of the palace. Charlotte turned another page in her book, but a sudden shift in the sounds outside made her pause. The laughter stopped. She lifted her head slightly, listening more closely. It wasn't unusual for play to pause now and then, but something about the silence felt out of place. She waited for a moment, expecting to hear George call out again or run across the courtyard the way he normally did. But instead, she heard hurried footsteps. A soft sense of worry settled in her chest, though she didn't exactly know why. She closed her book, stood from her seat, and walked toward the window for a better look. From where she stood, she could see movement in the courtyard, several attendants rushing toward one spot. They were kneeling and leaning over someone. Charlotte's breath caught as she realized that George was not standing among them. He was the one they were gathered around. Her heart thumped louder, not in fear of anything terrible, but in confusion and concern. She pressed her hand against the cool glass, trying to see clearly. She couldn't hear what the attendants were saying, but she could sense their worry in the way they moved. They weren't panicking, but they were not relaxed either. It looked like they were checking if he was okay, helping him sit up, and making sure he was calm. Only a few seconds passed before a royal guard stepped into the courtyard to assist. Charlotte felt an urge rise within her to go down there, but instead she stayed by the window, watching carefully. She had learned that sometimes it was better not to rush into situations until the adults signaled everything was safe and under control. Still, she couldn't stop her brows from tightening or her mind from filling with questions. The guard gently supported George as he got to his feet. He didn't seem hurt badly, but something clearly unexpected had happened. The attendant spoke to him softly, guiding him inside. Charlotte stepped away from the window and turned toward the door, her sense of calm fading into focused alertness. She needed to know what had happened. She needed to see her brother. As she moved through the hallway, the palace environment shifted around her. The staff did not run. Running was never allowed. But they walked briskly, quietly sharing information with one another. It was unusual to see so many people move with purpose at the same time, and that alone made Charlotte's worry grow. She kept her steps steady, even though her thoughts were racing. Charlotte reached the main staircase just as two attendants guided George inside. His expression was slightly shaken, and he seemed surprised by the sudden attention. When he noticed Charlotte, he managed a small smile, though a little uncertain. "George," Charlotte said softly as she approached. "Are you all right?" He nodded, though she could tell he wasn't completely sure how to explain what had happened. One of the attendants reassured her gently. "He seems fine, Princess. He might have slipped or been startled by something. We're taking him to be checked, just to be careful." Charlotte let out a small breath of relief. She didn't want to show how worried she was, not in a way that would make George feel uneasy. She simply touched his hand and said, "I'm glad you're okay." George squeezed her hand back, giving her a look that showed he appreciated her concern. But even with that moment of reassurance, Charlotte felt something deeper stir inside her. She knew her brother very well. He wasn't the type to slip easily, nor was he easily startled without reason. Something had interrupted his play, and she wanted to understand what it was. As the attendants led George toward the small medical room where all minor checks were done, Charlotte followed silently. She stayed by the door, watching as they made sure he was comfortable. When the palace physician arrived to examine him, she stepped aside, giving space but still keeping her eyes on her brother. The physician asked George simple questions. Did he feel dizzy? Did he hurt anything? Did he remember what happened? George answered with quiet honesty, though some of his responses were uncertain. Charlotte stood with her hands clasped in front of her, listening carefully. She wasn't trying to act like an adult, nor was she trying to take control. It was simply her natural instinct to protect her brother. She had always felt responsible for him in a gentle, caring way. Even their parents noticed how she kept an eye on him during events, making sure he didn't wander or get overwhelmed. After the physician confirmed that George was not seriously hurt, the mood in the room lightened slightly. Still, the palace staff continued to exchange looks of curiosity and concern. No one had a clear explanation for what caused the little incident, and in a place as carefully maintained as the palace, even small mysteries felt significant. Charlotte stepped forward once the physician finished. "George," she asked quietly, "what happened before you sat down on the ground?" George looked thoughtful for a moment, as if trying to remember clearly. I don't know," he said slowly. "I was playing with the ball, then someone walked nearby, I didn't see who. And then I fell." Charlotte felt a small spark ignite inside her, not anger but determination. His answer wasn't detailed, yet it suggested that someone else had been present, someone who had gone unnoticed or left quickly. She didn't think anything terrible had happened on purpose. She simply knew that the palace was usually very organized, and people didn't just appear unexpectedly in the children's play areas. As the attendants continued tidying and speaking softly, Charlotte stepped aside to think. Her mind worked in a calm but focused manner. She might have been young, but she had a strong sense of responsibility and awareness. She understood that sometimes problems began as small details that were too easy to ignore. A few minutes later, a royal guard approached Charlotte. He bowed respectfully before speaking. "Princess Charlotte, may I ask if you observed anything from the window?" Charlotte shook her head. "I only saw people going to help him. I didn't see the moment he fell." The guard nodded. "We will review the courtyard area just to make sure everything is safe." Charlotte looked at him thoughtfully. She appreciated how the guards maintained order, but in her heart, she felt this situation needed more than routine checking. It wasn't fear that moved her. It was her instinct to protect her brother. Even the idea that something small might have upset him or caused him to lose his balance made her want to understand the cause fully. The guard noticed her expression and added gently, "Please don't worry, Princess. We will look into it." Charlotte offered a polite nod in return, but her mind remained active. She walked back to George, who was now sitting on a cushioned seat, sipping water. His color had returned, and he looked much more like his cheerful self. "You're really all right?" she asked again, just to be sure. "Yes," George said with a soft smile. "It just happened so fast." Charlotte smiled back, though the little knot of concern inside her hadn't vanished. She stayed beside him for a while longer, simply watching him regain his comfort. Later, when George was taken to rest in his room for a short time, Charlotte found herself walking through the hallway alone. Her steps were slow, and her thoughts were deep. She replayed every moment she had seen, every expression on the attendants' faces, every response George gave. She couldn't explain it, but she felt strongly that something small yet important needed to be discovered. And then, almost as naturally as breathing, the words formed in her mind, the thought she would soon speak aloud. "Find who was there, find who might have caused this." She didn't imagine anything terrible. It wasn't anger or fear, just a quiet but strong desire for clarity. She wanted to ensure nothing similar happened again. She wanted her brother safe and confident, not confused by moments he couldn't explain. As she looked down the hallway toward the courtyard doors, her expression shifted from gentle concern to calm determination. She didn't yet know how the investigation would unfold or what truths would come to light. But she felt one thing very clearly: this quiet afternoon had changed. And she intended to understand why. Princess Charlotte spent the rest of the afternoon thinking about her brother and the strange moment that interrupted his playtime. Even though George was resting safely in his room, her thoughts kept circling back to the same question: what really happened? The palace was usually a place where surprises were rare. Everyone knew their tasks, the routines were orderly, and the environment was always carefully watched. So when something unusual occurred, especially involving the young prince, it naturally stirred concern. Charlotte found herself walking quietly through the hallways, her steps gentle but steady. With each corridor she passed, she saw royal guards positioned at their stations. Normally, they greeted her with warm, respectful smiles, but today their expressions were more focused, as if they too sensed that something needed understanding. Each guard held a posture of readiness, calm, of course, but carefully attentive. As Charlotte approached the main courtyard doors, she paused. She looked through the tall glass panes and saw the royal guard examining the area. They were moving thoughtfully, checking the paths, observing the layout, and speaking in low, orderly tones. It was the same courtyard where George had been playing only hours before, and now it felt strangely empty without the sound of his laughter bouncing off the stone walls. Charlotte pressed her hand gently against the glass. Part of her wanted to step outside and join the investigation, but she remembered her lessons about palace safety. Always let the guards take the lead, especially during uncertain moments. Still, she felt a growing need to be part of the solution, a desire that came not from impatience but from her bond with George. She turned away from the glass and continued down the hall. As she walked, she spotted one of the senior guards, Captain Rowan, approaching. He was someone Charlotte trusted deeply. He had been part of the palace security since before she was born and had watched her and her siblings grow with kindness and respect. "Princess Charlotte," Captain Rowan said with a gentle bow, "how is Prince George doing now?" "He is much better," Charlotte replied, her voice calm but thoughtful. "He's resting, but I still want to understand what happened." The captain nodded. He seemed to appreciate her honesty. "We are working to find that out. The courtyard is secure, and nothing immediately concerning has been found so far." Charlotte studied his face for a moment, searching for reassurance. Captain Rowan always spoke truthfully, and though he remained composed, she could see in his eyes that he took this situation seriously. The palace might be peaceful, but it was his duty to make sure every question had an answer. "Captain," Charlotte asked softly, "was anyone near George when he fell?" Captain Rowan hesitated, not because he wanted to hide anything, but because he wanted to speak carefully. "There were a few people in the courtyard, Princess, a couple of attendants and a palace worker. But we are still reviewing who was closest at the moment." Charlotte nodded slowly. Something inside her felt unsettled, but not in a frightening way. It was similar to the feeling she got when trying to solve a puzzle that was missing a piece. "I want to help," she said gently. The captain gave her a warm smile. "Your concern is admirable. For now, please trust that we are handling the matter. We will inform the family as soon as we have clear information." Charlotte appreciated his reassurance, yet her thoughts continued to spin with quiet determination. She wasn't angry. She wasn't afraid. She simply wanted clarity. She wanted her brother to feel safe during his playtime, not puzzled by moments he couldn't explain. And she wanted the palace, their home, to continue being a place where surprises were pleasant, not confusing. Later, Charlotte visited George again. He was awake now, lying comfortably on his bed with a stack of picture books beside him. The soft afternoon light filled the room, giving it a warm glow. George looked cheerful, though still a bit curious about the fuss happening around him. "Charlotte," he said as she entered, "do you think I really slipped, or did something happen that I don't remember?" Charlotte settled into a chair next to him. "I don't know yet," she said honestly, "but we're going to find out." George tilted his head. "Why is everyone acting like it's something big?" "Because you're important to us," Charlotte answered softly. "When something unexpected happens to someone we care about, we try to understand it." George nodded, absorbing her words the way children often do, quietly, sincerely. For a moment, they sat together in comfortable silence. Charlotte watched George's expression, noticing how relaxed he looked now. He wasn't frightened or upset anymore, and that gave her relief. Still, the same thought returned to her mind. Someone had been there. Someone had walked near him right before he fell. That detail lingered like a loose thread. A little while later, their mother came into the room to check on George. After speaking with him and offering comforting words, she stepped aside with Charlotte. "He's all right," she said softly. "Just a little shaken." Charlotte nodded. "I'm glad he's okay, but I still think something happened that we don't know about." Her mother gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "The guards will find the truth. We must be patient." Charlotte understood, but she also felt a responsibility that tugged at her heart. She wasn't trying to act beyond her age. She simply cared deeply for her brother. Their mother noticed this, offering her a soft smile. "You're very protective of him," she said. "That is a wonderful quality." Charlotte smiled back, though her mind was already turning again. After leaving George's room, Charlotte walked toward the study area where she often read or worked on small projects. Today, though, she couldn't focus on her usual activities. Her thoughts remained on the courtyard, the unknown person, and the unanswered question hovering in the air. What happened? Who was nearby? And why did the moment feel so sudden and unclear? These questions grew louder in her mind. Finally, she rose from her seat and headed toward the palace's central hall, where the guards often gathered to share updates. When she reached the hall, several guards were discussing the courtyard investigation. They paused respectfully when she entered. Charlotte approached them with calm confidence, her expression serious but composed. "Excuse me," she said softly. "Have you found out who was near my brother before he fell?" The guards glanced at one another before the senior among them stepped forward. "We are still checking, Princess. There were several people present, and we want to make sure we speak with each one." Charlotte listened carefully. She appreciated their professionalism, but she sensed that they were moving carefully not just because it was their duty, but because the situation involved the royal children. Then, with a gentle but firm voice, she spoke the words she had been carrying in her heart since the moment she saw George being helped inside. "Please find who was there," she said, her tone steady. "Find who might have caused him to fall." Her request wasn't loud or dramatic. It wasn't fueled by anger. It was guided by care. Her voice carried the weight of someone who simply wanted to protect a loved one. The hall became still for a moment. Although Charlotte was young, the guards could see the sincerity in her expression. Her worry was quiet but strong. Her determination was clear. And because she was a princess, someone they respected and served, they took her words to heart. Captain Rowan stepped forward again. He knelt slightly, not out of formality, but out of respect. "Princess Charlotte," he said gently, "we will look into every detail, we will speak to every person, and we will find out what happened." Charlotte's expression softened, relieved to hear his promise. She didn't want anyone blamed wrongly. She didn't want any trouble. She just wanted answers, and now she felt confident that the search for those answers had truly begun. As she turned to leave, she glanced once more at the courtyard doors in the distance. The sunlight reflected off the glass, creating a soft shimmer. The courtyard looked peaceful again, but Charlotte knew that peace sometimes held unanswered stories beneath its surface. When she walked away from the hall, something inside her had changed. She felt a new sense of responsibility building, not heavy or uncomfortable, but steady and brave. She wasn't trying to lead anyone, she simply wanted to ensure fairness and truth. Back in her room, Charlotte sat quietly for a long time. She thought about her family, her brother, and the palace that was both their home and their safe place. She knew the guards were working, but she also felt a personal connection to the mystery. It wasn't just an incident, it was a moment that made her realize how quickly things could shift from ordinary to unexpected. The command she gave earlier echoed softly in her mind. Find who was there. Find who caused it. Find the truth, not out of anger, not out of fear, but out of love. She didn't yet know that her simple, heartfelt command would set events in motion throughout the palace. It would lead to conversations, discoveries, and a surprising revelation in the days to come. For now, she simply sat by her window, watching the sunset paint the sky with soft colors. The day had started peacefully, shifted into confusion, and now settled into a quiet evening filled with hope that clarity was on its way. And Charlotte, with her calm determination, knew one thing with certainty: the truth would be found. The next morning arrived with soft light spreading across the palace walls. Birds sang gently outside, and the gardens looked peaceful, as if nothing unusual had happened the day before. But inside the palace, a quiet seriousness filled the air. The royal guards had begun their careful investigation after Princess Charlotte's heartfelt request, and everyone understood that they were looking for clarity, not trouble. Charlotte woke early. She usually enjoyed slow mornings, but today she felt different, more alert, more focused. She dressed calmly and made her way toward the breakfast room, where she found George already eating a light meal. He looked cheerful again, smiling when he saw her. "Good morning, Charlotte," he said happily, waving a spoon in the air. Charlotte smiled warmly. "Good morning, George. How are you feeling?" "I'm fine now," he replied proudly. "I don't even remember falling." Charlotte took a seat beside him. She was glad he felt better, but she still couldn't shake the curious feeling inside her. After breakfast, their mother guided George to play with some indoor toys, allowing him to rest gently while still having fun. Charlotte helped him set up a small train track, watching him laugh as he pushed the little trains around the curves. Seeing him so content brought a sense of relief, but her thoughts continued drifting toward the investigation happening outside. Shortly after, a palace attendant approached Charlotte quietly. "Princess, Captain Rowan asked if you could meet him in the main hall." Charlotte nodded, gave George a gentle pat on the back, and walked with calm footsteps toward the hall. She didn't hurry, but her heart beat a little faster with anticipation. She wasn't nervous, only eager to learn what had been discovered. When she reached the main hall, Captain Rowan and a few other guards were standing near a large table where maps and courtyard diagrams were spread out. They turned respectfully as she entered. "Princess Charlotte," Captain Rowan greeted kindly. "Thank you for coming." Charlotte stepped forward. "Did you find something?" "We have gathered some information," the captain replied in a careful tone. "Nothing alarming, but certainly interesting." Charlotte listened attentively as he continued. "We reviewed the courtyard area where Prince George was playing. There were 3 attendants nearby, as well as a palace worker who had been trimming plants along the walkway. Each person was asked what they saw." Charlotte nodded slowly. "And what did they say?" The captain looked down at the diagram, pointing to a small spot near the garden's edge. "Most of them simply reported that they noticed the prince fall but did not see how it happened. However, one attendant remembered seeing someone walking a bit too quickly through the area." Charlotte's eyes focused. "Who was it?" "A grounds contractor," Captain Rowan answered. "Someone hired recently to assist with garden maintenance. He had permission to be there, but his behavior was somewhat unusual." "Unusual how?" Charlotte asked, her curiosity deepening. The captain explained gently. "He seemed in a hurry. He didn't interact with anyone, and he walked away soon after the prince fell. When we asked him about it today, his answers were polite but not entirely clear." Charlotte felt a small shift inside her. It wasn't worry, just a growing awareness that the mystery was beginning to form a clearer shape. "Can I meet him?" she asked softly. Captain Rowan hesitated kindly. "You are thoughtful and brave, Princess, but for now it is better if we speak to him ourselves. We will gather more details before involving you directly." Charlotte accepted this explanation. She understood the captain was trying to protect her, and she respected his role. Still, she felt more determined now. Something told her that this person, this contractor, was important to understanding what happened. "Did he say anything about being near George?" she asked. "He said he passed by the area but did not notice the prince fall," the captain replied. "He claimed he was busy with his work." Charlotte folded her hands thoughtfully. "Do you believe him?" Captain Rowan smiled gently, appreciating her sharp thinking. "We believe in being fair. We are not judging him yet, but we would like more information." Charlotte nodded slowly. She respected the guards for being calm and careful. They weren't making assumptions. They were simply following clues step by step. It reminded her of the mystery books she loved reading, where the truth often hid in simple details. The captain continued, "We have also reviewed security footage. It shows the contractor walking near the courtyard, looking around as if searching for something. Not suspicious in itself, but unusual for someone supposed to be trimming plants." Charlotte leaned slightly closer. "What do you think he was looking for?" "That," Captain Rowan said with a thoughtful pause, "is what we are trying to find out." Charlotte stayed quiet for a moment. Her mind painted a picture. George playing happily, someone walking nearby, something distracting that person or startling George. None of it felt dangerous, but it didn't feel completely accidental either. It felt like there was a small story hidden just beneath the surface. "What will you do next?" she asked finally. "We will speak with him again," the captain answered. "This time more thoroughly, and we will check all his scheduled tasks for yesterday to ensure everything matches." Charlotte felt a gentle sense of trust wash over her. She admired the guards' professionalism. They weren't acting harshly, they were simply being wise. "Thank you," she said quietly. "Please keep me informed." Captain Rowan bowed lightly. "Of course, Princess." Charlotte walked out of the hall feeling a mixture of relief and curiosity. She didn't want anyone to be blamed unfairly. She didn't hope for wrongdoing. She simply wanted understanding, for George's sake, and for everyone's sense of safety. She returned to George's room, where he was now building a small castle out of blocks. When he saw her, he ran over excitedly. "Charlotte, look, my castle has 3 towers." Charlotte smiled warmly. "It looks wonderful." George pointed to a small block figurine. "This one is you." "You're guarding the castle." Charlotte's heart softened. "Am I? What am I guarding it from?" George thought for a moment, then shrugged. "I don't know, maybe from something surprising." Charlotte knelt beside him. Surprises can sometimes be good, she said gently, and sometimes confusing, but we always try to understand them. George nodded, satisfied with her answer. As they played together, Charlotte's thoughts drifted again. She imagined the contractor walking the moment George fell, the quiet confusion afterward. She wondered if the contractor had simply been distracted, perhaps by something harmless. Or maybe he had been nervous about something unrelated, and George's fall happened at the same moment by coincidence. But then again, Charlotte believed strongly in noticing patterns. And her instinct told her that the contractor's quick movements, unclear explanations, and unusual behavior were not just random details. Later in the afternoon, as the sun shone warmly through the palace windows, Captain Rowan requested another meeting with Charlotte. She left George happily building his castle and made her way to the hall again. This time the captain looked more serious, not troubled but more focused. "Princess," he began, "we spoke to the contractor again, and something interesting came forward." Charlotte leaned in slightly, waiting. "He admitted he was trying to avoid being seen yesterday," the captain said carefully. "Not because he meant any harm. He said he believed he had accidentally entered a part of the garden where he wasn't supposed to be. He was worried he would be questioned, so he walked away quickly." Charlotte absorbed his words. "So he wasn't trying to hide something serious?" "Not necessarily," the captain said. "But his nervousness may have caused him to move too quickly, passing close to the prince without realizing he startled him." Charlotte blinked, processing the idea. "So George may have been surprised by his quick movement?" "That is one possibility," the captain replied. "A sudden presence or quick motion near a child can cause them to lose balance." Charlotte nodded. It made sense. It didn't involve danger or wrongdoing, just a moment of misunderstanding, but something still felt unfinished. "Why was he in the wrong area?" she asked. "That," Captain Rowan said calmly, "is what we are still clarifying." Charlotte felt a spark of curiosity again. Something about the contractor's story seemed honest, yet incomplete. "Is he here now?" she asked quietly. "Yes," the captain replied. "We asked him to remain available until we finish our review." Charlotte thought for a moment. "May I speak with him, just to ask a few simple questions?" Captain Rowan hesitated again, but Charlotte spoke gently, reassuringly. "I don't want to scare him," she said softly. "I only want to understand." The captain studied her expression. He saw no anger, no fear, only kindness and thoughtful determination. Finally, he nodded. "I will arrange it," he said. A short while later, Charlotte stood in a small sitting room where the contractor had been invited to wait. He was a quiet-looking man, humble, with gentle hands that showed he spent much time working with plants. When Charlotte entered, he stood quickly, nervous but respectful. "Princess," he said softly. Charlotte offered a warm, calm smile. "Thank you for speaking with me. I only want to ask a few things." The man nodded, his posture slightly tense. Charlotte began with kindness. "Were you near my brother yesterday?" "Yes," he admitted quietly. "But I didn't mean to startle him. I was just passing by." Charlotte tilted her head slightly. "Why were you in such a hurry?" The man looked at the floor. "I thought maybe I had stepped into a section of the garden I wasn't supposed to enter. I didn't want to get in trouble, so I walked away quickly." Charlotte's voice remained gentle. "Were you looking for something?" The man hesitated, then sighed softly. "I dropped my work badge earlier. I thought it fell somewhere in the courtyard, so I was searching for it." Charlotte felt a quiet click inside her mind, as if a puzzle piece had finally found its place. "You were nervous because you lost your badge," he nodded. "Yes, Princess, I didn't want anyone to think I was careless." Charlotte took a slow breath. The picture was finally coming together. A hurried man anxious about losing something important. A child playing nearby. A quick movement that startled him. A small fall with no wrongdoing behind it. Charlotte's heart softened completely. "Thank you for telling the truth," she said gently. The man bowed deeply, relief on his face. Charlotte stepped out of the room where Captain Rowan waited. "I think he was just confused," she said softly, "and I think George was simply surprised." The captain smiled warmly. "I agree, Princess." Charlotte felt lighter now, her heart calm. She had wanted understanding, and now she had it. The truth was not dramatic or frightening, it was simply human. A moment of confusion, a small accident, a misunderstanding that needed clarity. But something still awaited ahead, because even though the contractor meant no harm, the guards would soon discover one last detail that completed the whole story. For now, though, Charlotte walked back to George with a peaceful smile. She felt proud, not because she solved a mystery, but because she had stayed kind, patient, and brave. And the path to the final truth had just begun to shine. The day continued quietly inside the palace, but a subtle sense of anticipation moved through its halls. Everyone knew the royal guard was close to understanding the full truth behind George's unexpected fall. Princess Charlotte, though young, sensed this change in the atmosphere too. She walked softly through the corridors, observing every detail, listening to every calm exchange of information among the staff. She wasn't anxious, only thoughtful, aware that the final pieces of the puzzle were drawing together. Captain Rowan had promised to keep her updated, and Charlotte trusted him. But even so, she felt connected to the investigation in a personal way. After all, it involved her little brother, someone she cared for with a gentle, protective heart. In the afternoon, Charlotte stepped into the inner garden to take a quiet walk. It was a place she often went to when she needed to think. The flowers were in full bloom, filling the air with sweet scents. Bees hummed peacefully as they moved from blossom to blossom. The soft sunlight warmed her skin. The entire garden felt like a calming breath, allowing her mind to settle. As she walked along the stone path, one of the younger guards approached politely. "Princess Charlotte," he said with a respectful bow, "Captain Rowan asks if you would join him in the small council room." Charlotte thanked him and followed the hallway he directed her toward. Her steps were steady, her face calm. She didn't know what she would hear, but she sensed it was important. When she reached the council room, Captain Rowan and two senior guards stood by a low table with documents arranged neatly. They looked up as she entered, offering respectful nods. "Princess," Captain Rowan greeted warmly, "thank you for coming." Charlotte stepped closer. "Have you discovered something new?" "Yes," the captain replied gently. "We believe we now understand exactly what happened yesterday. And we wanted to share the information with you because your questions helped guide us to this point." Charlotte listened attentively. Captain Rowan continued. "The contractor you spoke with earlier, the one who lost his badge, told us the truth about that part of the story. But today we found something else. His badge was discovered near a small maintenance door behind the courtyard. That door leads to a storage room where gardening tools are kept." Charlotte blinked softly. "Is he allowed inside that room?" "Yes," the captain answered, "but the door is usually kept locked. We learned that the lock had been slightly loose for a few days, making it appear closed even when it wasn't fully secure." Charlotte thought carefully. "So he might have opened it without realizing it wasn't properly locked before." "That's correct," Captain Rowan confirmed. "We checked the door carefully, and it seems the contractor pushed it open only because the lock didn't catch the last time someone closed it." Charlotte pictured the scene, a worker searching for his badge, gently pushing a door and not realizing that it was already loose. It made sense, but she still wondered, "How does that connect to George?" The captain nodded as if expecting the question. When the contractor opened the storage door, a small garden cart that had been leaning inside rolled forward slightly. It didn't come out quickly or forcefully, but it made a soft noise, a noise that might have startled someone nearby. Charlotte's eyes widened softly with realization. So George heard the noise, and that surprised him. "It is very possible," the captain said with a gentle nod. "Children are often quick to respond to sudden sounds, especially during play." George may not have understood where the sound came from. He might have turned suddenly, lost balance, and sat down unexpectedly. Charlotte let out a slow breath. The explanation was simple, gentle, and free of any harmful intention. It was almost comforting to know that the moment had been caused by something so small, something no one intended. "So the contractor didn't do anything wrong on purpose?" Charlotte asked softly. "No, Princess," Captain Rowan said with reassuring calm. "He was only searching for his badge, and he accidentally opened a door that wasn't fully secured. He didn't mean to startle anyone. He didn't even realize the noise reached the prince." Charlotte felt a wave of relief wash through her. She smiled softly, grateful that the truth was harmless. Her worry began to dissolve like mist under the morning sun. "What happens now?" she asked gently. "We will speak to the contractor once more," Captain Rowan said kindly. "Not to blame him, but to advise him to be more careful. And we will fix the faulty lock immediately so this kind of misunderstanding doesn't happen again." Charlotte nodded. "That sounds fair." She appreciated the guard's balanced approach, firm but kind, responsible but not harsh. It made her respect them even more. Captain Rowan then added, "Princess, I want to thank you. Your calm leadership, even at your young age, helped us understand how important it was to examine every detail carefully." Charlotte felt her cheeks warm slightly with modest pride. "I just wanted to make sure George was safe," she said quietly, "and that no one misunderstood what happened." Her sincerity touched the guards. They saw not just a princess, but someone wise beyond her years, someone who cared deeply and thought clearly even under unexpected circumstances. The captain bowed respectfully. "The matter is nearly resolved, but before we finalize our report, we would like to speak with the contractor once more. You are welcome to listen from outside the room if you wish. It may help bring you closure." Charlotte considered this for a moment. She didn't want to make anyone nervous, especially someone who hadn't intended any harm, but she also understood the importance of seeing things through. "I would like that," she said softly, "but only if he feels comfortable." "We will make sure of it," the captain assured her. A short while later, Charlotte stood just outside a calm, well-lit room where the contractor sat across from Captain Rowan. The door was slightly open, not enough for her to intrude, but enough for her to listen respectfully. Captain Rowan spoke in a steady, friendly tone. "We found your badge near the storage door. It is safe now." The contractor let out a sigh of relief. "Thank you, Captain." "We also discovered the lock was loose," the captain continued. "You are not at fault for opening it. However, we ask that you report any loose locks or doors in the future." "I understand," the man replied gently. "I will be more careful." "And about the sound that came from the door," the captain added kindly, "it may have startled Prince George. He lost balance because of it." The contractor's eyes widened with sincere concern. "Oh no, I didn't realize. I am so sorry. I hope he is all right." "He is perfectly fine," the captain reassured him with a warm smile. "And Princess Charlotte understands it was an accident." The contractor looked deeply relieved. His shoulders relaxed, his expression softening. He wasn't a man seeking trouble. He was simply someone who had experienced a confusing moment and felt overwhelmed by the attention it brought. Charlotte stepped away from the doorway quietly, not wanting to disturb the conversation. She felt calm, satisfied, and grateful. The truth was clear now. No harm, no wrongdoing, just a series of small coincidences that created a bigger mystery. Later that afternoon, Charlotte went to see George again. He was drawing cheerful pictures on a piece of paper. When she entered, he smiled brightly. "Charlotte, look, I drew us in the garden." Charlotte sat beside him. "That's lovely, George, and guess what? We found out what happened yesterday." George's eyes grew curious. "What was it?" "A small noise surprised you," Charlotte explained gently. "Someone opened a door without knowing it would make a sound. It wasn't anyone trying to do anything bad. It was just a simple accident." George nodded thoughtfully, then smiled. "Oh, so it was just a funny surprise?" Charlotte laughed softly. "Something like that." George seemed happy with this explanation. His cheerful nature made him accept things easily without worry or confusion. Later that evening, as the sun lowered and the palace glowed with warm golden light, Captain Rowan returned to give Charlotte a final update. He bowed respectfully. "The investigation is complete," he said. "There will be no further concerns. Everything is safe." Charlotte thanked him with a grateful smile. "You did a wonderful job." "We followed your guidance," the captain said warmly. "Your care for your brother helped us see the matter clearly." Charlotte felt a gentle sense of pride again, not because she wanted praise, but because she felt she had helped bring peace to everyone involved. As night approached, Charlotte sat by her bedroom window, watching the sky fill with stars. The palace felt peaceful again, calm and settled. The uncertainty of the past day had faded, and in its place was clarity, kindness, and understanding. She thought about the contractor, the nervous man who never intended to cause confusion. She hoped he felt relieved now. She thought about Captain Rowan, who had handled everything with fairness and patience. And most importantly, she thought about George, happily asleep in his room, safe and carefree again. Charlotte realized something important. Leadership didn't always mean giving big speeches or making dramatic choices. Sometimes leadership meant asking gentle questions, wanting fairness, and caring deeply for others. Her quiet request, "Find who was there," had been spoken from her heart. And because of that, the investigation had stayed calm, kind, and honest from beginning to end. She felt proud, peaceful, and ready for a new day. Little did she know. The air carried a sense of calm, as if the palace itself was relieved to finally understand the mystery that had worried everyone only a day before. Princess Charlotte woke feeling lighter than she had in days. For the first time since George's fall, she felt a complete sense of certainty and comfort. She dressed quietly and made her way to the breakfast room, humming softly to herself. George was already there, sitting up straight and smiling as he stirred his cereal. His cheerful expression reassured her immediately. Whatever confusion the moment had caused had faded from his memory, leaving only his bright, playful spirit behind. "Good morning," George called out as soon as he saw her. Charlotte smiled warmly. "Good morning, George. Did you sleep well?" "I slept great," he replied proudly. "I even dreamed about building a new castle," Charlotte laughed softly. "Another castle? You must really love building things." George nodded with excitement. "Maybe today I'll make one with 4 towers." As they ate together, their mother joined them, smiling at the sight of her children happy again. She gave Charlotte a soft look, one filled with appreciation. Charlotte understood its meaning immediately. She had handled everything with maturity and grace. After breakfast, George ran off to play with his wooden trains. Charlotte stayed behind for a moment, sipping her tea thoughtfully. The calmness of the room made her reflect on everything that had happened. The confusion, the unanswered questions, her heartfelt request, and the investigation that followed. She wasn't proud because she acted like an adult. She was proud because she had followed her heart. She had spoken up out of love for her brother, out of a simple desire to understand. And that sincere feeling had guided everyone toward the truth. A short time later, Captain Rowan entered the room with a polite bow. "Princess Charlotte," he greeted gently, "I wanted to let you know that the contractor has been officially cleared. We explained everything to him and he understands the situation clearly now." Charlotte nodded with a calm smile. "I'm glad." "He didn't mean to cause any confusion." "Indeed," the captain replied. "He even said he appreciated your kindness. He was worried at first, but after learning that no one misunderstood his actions, he felt reassured." Charlotte felt a warm sense of relief. She never wanted anyone to feel scared or blamed, especially when the truth revealed a simple, harmless accident. Captain Rowan continued, "I want you to know that the courtyard door lock has been fixed properly, and the rest of the garden locks were checked as well." "That's good," Charlotte said softly. "I'm happy everything is safe now." The captain bowed once more before leaving her to join her family. Charlotte felt grateful for him. He had listened to her fears, respected her voice, and guided the investigation with calm professionalism. She admired his steady leadership and gentle respect. Later that morning, Charlotte went outside into the courtyard with George and a few attendants. The courtyard looked the same as always, bright, open, welcoming, but for Charlotte it now carried a deeper meaning. She walked slowly, observing everything with quiet reflection. George ran ahead with his ball, laughing as he spun in circles. Charlotte watched him for a moment, feeling a tender sense of responsibility. She knew she couldn't protect him from every surprise or every stumble in life, but she could always be his support, his comfort, and his steady presence. As she walked near the flower beds, she spotted the contractor from a distance. He was trimming a small bush, working gently and carefully. When he noticed Charlotte, he paused, unsure if he should approach. Charlotte offered a soft smile and walked toward him. "Good morning," she said kindly. The man bowed quickly, though politely. "Good morning, Princess." "I wanted to thank you," Charlotte said gently, "for being honest and for helping us understand what happened." The man looked touched, maybe even surprised by her kindness. "Thank you for saying that, Princess. I am truly glad the prince is all right." Charlotte nodded. "He's perfectly fine now, and I'm glad you weren't blamed for anything you didn't do. Everyone knows it was an accident." The contractor smiled with visible relief. "That means a great deal to me, Princess. I will be more careful from now on. And I'll make sure to report any broken locks or tools." Charlotte smiled back. "That would be helpful for everyone." As she walked away, she felt good knowing that the contractor had found closure. She liked seeing people feel heard and understood. She believed kindness had a way of growing, just like the flowers in the garden he cared for. When she returned to George, he was trying to balance the ball on one knee. He wobbled and giggled before it dropped onto the grass. Charlotte couldn't help but laugh along with him. His playful spirit was contagious. "Charlotte, look," he said happily. "I almost did it." "You did very well," she encouraged him, ruffling his hair gently. "Try again, you'll get it soon." As the day went on, the palace staff gradually returned to their usual routines. The atmosphere felt calmer, lighter. The sense of mystery that once lingered in the hallways had faded completely, replaced with a quiet feeling of harmony. In the afternoon, Charlotte joined her mother in the reading room. Her mother set down her book and looked at her with warm admiration. "You handled everything beautifully, Charlotte," she said softly. Charlotte blinked with humble surprise. "I just wanted to help George." "And you did," her mother replied. "But you also showed kindness, patience, and fairness. Those are qualities of a good leader." Charlotte looked down for a moment, her cheeks warming slightly. She wasn't searching for praise, but hearing those words filled her with a gentle pride, a pride not in herself, but in knowing she had stayed true to her heart. Her mother continued, "Sometimes leadership is not about giving commands or making serious decisions. Sometimes it is about listening, caring, and guiding others with calm understanding. You showed all of that." Charlotte smiled softly, absorbing her mother's words. They settled inside her like seeds, ready to grow with time. Later, as evening approached, Charlotte and George sat together on a blanket in the courtyard, watching the sky turn soft shades of pink and gold. The beauty of the moment filled the air with comfort and stillness. George leaned against Charlotte's arm. "Do you think tomorrow will be fun too?" Charlotte wrapped an arm gently around him. "I think so," she said warmly. "Every day can be fun if we try to understand things and stay kind." George nodded happily, accepting her words without needing to understand every detail behind them. As the sky darkened and stars appeared one by one, Charlotte felt her mind drift into reflection, not heavy or worried thoughts, but thoughtful, peaceful ones. She realized that the past few days had taught her something important. She learned that even in calm places, unexpected things can happen. She learned that curiosity can lead to answers. She learned that fairness matters, that people deserve to be understood before judged. And she learned that gentle leadership can come from the heart, not just from position. Most importantly, she learned that caring deeply for others is not a weakness. It is a powerful strength. The contractor had been cleared. The royal guard had done an excellent job. George was safe and cheerful again. Everything had returned to normal, but Charlotte had changed in a quiet, meaningful way. She looked up at the stars, feeling a peaceful glow inside her chest. Perhaps someday she would take on bigger responsibilities. Perhaps someday she would make decisions for many people, not just her brother. And when that day came, she would remember this moment, this simple mystery solved with patience, kindness, and courage. For now, she was happy being herself, a thoughtful sister, a curious learner, and someone who cared deeply for her family. As night settled over the palace, Charlotte walked George back inside, hand in hand. Their footsteps echoed softly through the calm halls. Tomorrow would be another day filled with laughter, learning, and gentle surprises. And Charlotte knew she would face every new moment with the same steady heart, quiet, loving, and brave.